The second issue of Ultimate Wolverine is finally out, and that means that I finally get to break it down to you freaking nerds. So without further ado, the last issue, if you don't remember, consisted of Magic, Colossus, and Omega Red, basically a bunch of evil Russians, a part of a group called the Eurasian Republic, consisted of them running experiments on and brainwashing Wolverine to turn him into their ultimate killing machine. And after doing so, he was escorted to one of the secret bases of a group that fights against the Eurasian Republic's corruption called the Opposition, where he brutally murdered Mystique, Nightcrawler, and a bunch of Opposition soldiers. This issue, on the other hand, picks up 30 years in the past, with the professor responsible for creating Weapon X. And while sitting in his office staring at pictures of Logan and other mutants, he began to express how much promise these potential new subjects exhibited, stating that some of them had the ability to heal themselves and others could even heal other people. But before being able to finish noting all of his new discoveries, he was interrupted by some clapping coming from none other than the Maker. Up until this point, the professor had never seen or even heard of the Maker though, so he confusingly asked him who he was, to which Reed responded, "I am but a simple man in search of a better world." Because as you should know if you've been watching my coverage of Ultimate Spider-Man, the Maker completely shifted the trajectory of this universe by going into the past and ensuring that people like Peter Parker, Scott Lang, and a bunch of other people never became superheroes. But angry that this random person sort of just broke into his office, the professor would then ask the Maker what his intentions were and how he gained clearance to make his way inside, but refusing to give him any sort of explanation, the Maker literally just jammed his finger right into the professor's mouth and through the back of his skull. And immediately after doing so, he pulled out a box of matches, lit one of them on fire, and then burned the professor's picture of Logan, which eventually caused the entire building to go up in flames. So this was basically a way of him changing the direction that Logan's life would go in to ensure that he also never became a hero along with all the others. The story then jumps over to present day, where a small Eurasian task force was pursuing an unidentified target through a snowy cluster of trees. And although they didn't know what this target was going to look like, they knew that they were getting closer and closer to their location after coming across a trail of footprints. So they continued following those footprints deeper and deeper into the woods until being consumed by an overwhelming sensation of fear upon seeing a dark shadowy figure that was lurking in the trees above them. And immediately upon being spotted, Wolverine leapt off of the branch, extending his claws while soaring directly towards them. But unfortunately, we don't get to see the extent of his brutality right away, because after that the story goes a few days back into the past, with Colossus, Magic, and Omega Red questioning whether or not Dr. Prostovich's procedure on Wolverine was actually successful, out of fear that someone else could get into his brain and use him as a puppet just like they were. So Prostovich promised them that her work was successful and that Wolverine truly didn't have any memories left over, but because she didn't believe her, Magic used one of those annoying ass portals from Marvel Rivals to teleport everybody to Logan's chamber so they could analyze one of his many frequent nightmares. Nightmares that were causing them to believe that he did in fact still have his memories. Trying to defend herself once again though, Prostovich claimed that this sort of behavior was perfectly normal and that he was simply just dreaming, but unconvinced that she knew what she was talking about, Colossus grabbed her by the throat, lifted her up into the air, and demanded that she remove Logan from his chamber despite the potential dangers of awaking him while he was sleeping. And almost immediately after she did, Colossus held him in the air the same way he did to her, indicating that animals like Logan didn't respond to verbal commands. They responded to violence, and unless you exercised your true power on them, it was inevitable that they eventually rebel against you. So doing exactly that, he then hurled Logan across the room and onto the floor like he was a worthless piece of garbage, before stating that they should put him through a test against a group of 10 of their finest soldiers, which is precisely when the story takes us back over to present day after Logan slashed into one of their troop members' faces before disappearing into the trees again. And at this point in time, the task force still wasn't sure who they were going up against and whether or not they were a part of the opposition. But as they continue searching for him across the cold, snow-covered forest, rumors about a creature called the Winter Soldier began surfacing among them. Most of them believed that it was just a myth or a rumor, but others were starting to believe that the rumors were true. And upon noticing some cameras attached to some nearby trees, they were overwhelmed by fear yet again because they realized that they were being used by their own leaders as nothing more than practice for this monster, who unbeknownst to them had been watching their every move, and when he finally let himself be known again, he brutally killed every single one of them by slicing slicing their heads off of their bodies before walking up to one of the cameras to show Colossus and the others that the little test they put him up to was nothing more than a walk in the park. But sadly, that's where this issue comes to an end. But if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.